Welcome to Zen and the Art of Self-Publishing. It's the podcast where we slow down, get honest, and put the human back at the center of author life. I'm your host, Janet Margot, so come on in and let's talk. Today's guest is Rachel Morton, a UK-based indie author who's published over 50 books since going full-time in 2016. She actually writes across two pen names, so you may not totally be familiar with her name. But beyond the books, she does co-host another podcast, the Indie Author Roadmap. She also runs a YouTube channel for authors, is building a course on dictation-based writing as well. And this year, she's launching the Northern Indie Author Summit in November. What I like about Rachel and why I invited her here today is because she's become a little bit known for pushing back hard on indie author culture. And I'm a little bit of a rebel myself. So welcome, Rachel Morton.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with some of the basic background. Walk me through your two pen names. You don't have to share them with anyone. But what's the dividing line? And was that a deliberate business decision from day one or something that evolved?
It was definitely something that evolved. I have two pen names, like you've said. I have this one, and then I have another one, which I lovingly call pen name X. And when I started in the indie business, which was back in 2012, so I was one of the early KDP adopters.
Wow.
I wrote my first book in the early 2000s, and I was looking at everyone goes down the usual route first, querying things like that. And then KDP came along, and I was like, I was going to try this. I tried to do it in my real name, and I was feeling really, really self-conscious because friends would be on Facebook, and it was the early days of Facebook as well, and they would be commenting, and I was like, it was putting a barrier for me to be myself because there was people that knew me. So I was like, I'm just going to go and write books and put them out there under a random name. And I didn't take it seriously, this new KDP thing. It was just a thing. I was playing with it, and it grew. And so the pen name with it grew, and it got a reader base, and I got fans. And then I got to a point where I was like, I miss the side where I can speak to my readers, where I can meet my readers and see my readers and be a face. So I was like, let's try and branch off now into me, and be that person and put myself out there. And that's how I got here.
So how do you how do you manage that brand separation in practice, with different reader lists, different platforms, different voice online, and even, because you mentioned it, potentially different face, or do you not bother with that?
They are completely different. When I first was like, okay, I'm going to put myself out in the public, it was very hard to manage both. And I found if I was working with one side, then the other side would get forgotten. And then if I switched back, then, so it was very hard balance. So I have to kind of, I do a lot of planning. I love all my planning stuff. So when I'm doing all that, I have to make sure I'm planning for both sides and doing equal work. But it is hard to balance two completely different personalities.
And do you, did I read somewhere that you were actually toying with a third pen name?
I did play with a third pen name. It was maybe probably on my podcast or Substack or something. Because I really like the idea of writing why choose romance, because I really like fantasy and romancy.
Yeah.
And so I was playing with it, and mostly just because it's not a different genre to what I write, but it's very, very spicy. And so there's a little bit of that shyness coming back in, putting my name on it. And I was like, do I really want to make a third pen name? It's because
did you do it?
No. Plus I think I was also, I'm terrible for shiny objects and, new projects and new ideas. And I was like, I have to, on my other pen name is where most of my books are. And I've got series that need finishing. I'm like, you need to stop it with making new series and just go and finish them. Because you've got readers there who I've made the promise to by writing the books. So yeah, I've not done anything with that.
This is something that I struggle with, and I really would love your input on. At what point does splitting across pen names stop being like smart fragmentation and instead start fragmenting your audience and what you mentioned, attention? Like, how do you balance that?
It's like I said, I really have to plan, and I think if you're going to do 2 pen names, you have to be very mindful of yourself, especially if you're not full-time at it. I would imagine it's harder. Um, but I'm not really sure when it kind of fragments it. You can get one side will start taking off, and that's when you'll start like focusing on that one, and kind of it leaves the other one behind. If
Hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Did you ever think about, with respect to the pen names, did you ever think about like discoverability and algorithms?
See, when I first made my other pen name, it wasn't a thing. Like, back in 2012, there was
Right,
no groups, and it was just people putting books, you just whacked up a
right.
cover that you made, and so nobody cared. Nobody was the most attention we had, I don't know if you were on KDP back then, but on the Amazon page, it used to have, like, you could click like on the tropes and things that are in the book and boost yourself up the chart, so we'd have likes parties on Facebook, and that was your algorithm. So
I don't even remember that. Oh my God.
yeah. Yeah, they
Wow.
took it off, and we were like, "Oh my gosh!" Because I got one of my books to bestseller by just doing that, getting readers to just click like on the different it lists the tropes that were in the books.
Those early
So
days were crazy.
yeah,
Those
so
are really,
back then, the algorithms were never a thing, so no one ever thought about it when I started.
wow. So now you've written, I want to move a little bit more into um, some of the stuff that you push back on and that I push back on more in private than in public. And that's one of the joys of having this podcast is now I can do it in public.
Yeah.
But you've written that you're a decent figure author and you're happy with that. What was the reaction when you first said that out loud in this industry that has gotten increasingly numbers focused?
I wrote a post, about it being okay if you earn 5 figures or whatever you earn, and somebody messaged me and said that I'd only written that because I'm not earning 6 figures. And I'm like, "Kind of, but not." It wasn't a sour grapes thing, it was more of a, "It's okay." And so you get kind of that reaction of a couple of some people, if you say that. But I am finding that more and more people who are at the mid 5-figure level, um, are voicing that they're at the mid 5-figure level. And like, yeah, this is great. We're earning a living. We're earning a living wage off our off our writing. So I think
So
it's growing.
the people that you're referring to then, they're saying they're fine with where they are, as opposed to like the people that I see who are at five figure talking about it are usually in groups asking about how can I get to six?
Yes.
But
Oh
you're
yes.
saying there's people who are happy.
Yeah, I think because I came away from the big groups, because it's really lovely to watch somebody celebrating what they've achieved, and it's amazing. But I think you can get swept up in, and that's the goal. And if you don't get the 6 or 7 figures, then you're a failure. And so when you see
Yeah.
people in those groups at the mid 5 figures, they're then how can I get to the 6 figures? Um, but more on the where I write on Substack is where I've had more of the people go, well, I'm 5 figures and it's great. I think it's maybe the places.
So, and when you're talking about groups, just for listeners, when you're talking about groups, you're largely talking about like Facebook groups,
Facebook groups, yeah. Yeah, the big
which are
communities
still
on that.
quite active for authors, for anybody that's like new to the indie author community. I know I have quite a few clients who don't even realize that there's a whole indie author world out there on
Yeah,
Facebook, which is
yeah.
insane. But and those groups can be great for learning, but they do get
So,
very, I'm going to say prestige focused, which I think bothers me because it's the self-publishing community anyway. If you're if you're prestige focused, then it seems like you would be trying to swim in the trad world.
Yes.
Um,
And I do
but
see a lot sorry, I was gonna say I
you
do see
do
a lot
see
of
a lot of what?
the six-figure authors, that will brag are kind of not it's you're not getting the whole story with it, and, I think sometimes it can be very misleading.
Tell me more about that.
So, you can have someone who puts up that they earned $10,000 this month in their book, but they don't tell you that they've maybe spent $8,000 to get that, royalties. So, they're still in profit, but they're not at the profit. So I think sometimes you just have to be careful and see what else has actually gone into that. And some people who are earning massive six figures and, that looks really awesome. They've maybe been at this for 10 years and they've had failure after failure after failure and got there because they've learned all these lessons as well.
Let's break that down a little bit more. First, I think it's important for us to think about why the number, whether it's 4, 5, or 6 figures, even matters. Like, are you trying to inspire someone? Are you trying to say that you can do this? Are you trying to say, look at me? Because, like you just even mentioned about how you got a bestseller early on in 2012, that's a very different world than today, right?
Yes,
So nobody's going to
absolutely.
be able to replicate that. So
No.
sometimes I feel like I see some of the success stories online and I'm kind of like, shut the F up. Like, what the, like, it's just a different world. And then
Yep.
that, kudos to you. You've built the audience, yada, yada, yada. But that you're not exactly an example for somebody who's starting today or who's struggling, at their 4 figures and trying to get to 5. It's just not super helpful. The
No.
other thing is, like you said, they're not netting that number. But the thing that I see that drives me insane, because I see so many people's numbers in my consulting practice. There's people who purport to be, let's say, 6-figure authors. It could be any digit though, any number. But they purport to be 6-figure authors and it's like, well, over what period of time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're certainly not making 6 figures in 1 year. And
No.
I wonder, is that, which is fine. Like, I'm at a point where I'm better off talking about my lifetime royalty achievement rather than like, this is what I made this year or this month. And that's absolutely fine. But when you sit there and put yourself out there in the indie author community of being a 6-figure author, I think it's kind of like, chasing the bestseller status when you had bestseller status in your small category for a week,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. 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 I did see an author actually was talking about six figures and then dropped in it was six figures across her entire career. And I'm like, I don't think that's what it actually meant to mean. But she was selling courses on the back of being a six-figure author. Uh, and I was like, that feels a little bit misleading.
It does. It does. It's like, I would never combine my entrepreneur revenue in the publishing, even though it's publishing, I would never combine that with my book royalties. Like that's not, I don't think that's legit. It's also the same problem with a lot of people who claim to be like direct sales experts.
Yes.
It's like, well, is that actual books to consumers or is it books and courses to other authors? I think that makes a difference. It may not in their bank account, but I think it makes a difference when you're talking about credentials or your success and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely does. Because on my other pen name, like over the time, I've made over the six figures on that pen name, through Amazon, but I've actually made way more on royalties, Patreon, all the other things. And so I could claim
Yeah.
I'd earn X amount on that pen name, and I have, but not
Yeah.
just on Amazon.
Right. You cited research on lottery winners, life satisfaction rising and holding, but day-to-day happiness barely moving. Why did that stick with you and enough to bring it into a piece about authors?
Yeah. Well, I have a history in psychology, so I have.
Oh,
I was studying for my PhD when I went full time. So my my foundation is in psychology. So that was one of the studies that I remember studying in university that showed that people will win the lottery will have um they'll have a spike in their happiness when they've won the lottery. You're going to be excited. And then you get used to it and it goes down to baseline. So if you were a miserable person when you won the lottery, you're going to go back down to being a miserable person. And it
Wow.
was, yeah, like you are a baseline happiness. Whatever your happiness is, that's your line, and it doesn't matter what happens. You'll go back to it. Um, and so it was that with the people that talk about earning the big money with their royalties and stuff, like they put their happiness into the future, and it's like it's been scientifically shown that even if you hit that figure, you're not going to be any happier than you are today. You've got to choose to be happy. So yeah, that was what that was for.
So if someone's chasing six figures and they're kind of miserable and feeling burned out and like, hustle, hustle, hustle mode, what would you say to them, not as a philosophy, but as practical advice?
I'd asked them to think what they really want. And I actually got to that place myself where I was in the
Right,
Facebook groups and watching people and chasing the numbers, because when you're watching everybody else, you feel like that's what you're supposed to do.
right.
And um, it was it kind of, you see, it puts people into burnout and they get stressed. And I've seen so many people posting, I'm not making any money, I should just quit. And I'm like, that's so sad. If you enjoy being a writer, why give it up just because you're not making the money? So if someone was in that point, I would say to them, what is it that you actually want? Not somebody else's want or dream or what you think you're supposed to have, but the person who sat down that first time to write the book, what was your dream right back then? And it doesn't
Right.
even have to be money. Someone's dream can be, I just want to finish my book and have it published, and that is a perfectly acceptable dream.
Yeah, I feel differently across my pen names. I feel differently about, my goals for having the pen name and for writing in a particular genre. Some are definitely more commercially driven, hoping to make money off it. And then other things are definitely more passion projects.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a lot of passion projects, and it's like, it's not stuff that I'm gonna go insane with marketing. I might do a lot of organic stuff because I'm just passionate about a theme or a setting or something like that. Um, do you think there's a version of caring about income that you think is healthy, or does the framing itself just need to go?
Um, I think there is, as long as you're looking after yourself and not chasing again someone else's stuff. If I with my why choose one was a little bit like you, with the trying to write something commercial that I knew is popular and would sell.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that one would have the danger of going to an unhealthy level of chasing money, because, if it didn't sell, then I might, what's wrong with it? Or, burning myself out with it when it wasn't working or whatever. Or it could
Right,
be absolutely wonderful. But yeah, I think there is a balance, but I think it's all personal to what you want and what you need.
right. I know I've seen this theme come up in your content, like being sold the dream. There's a lot of inspirational talk out
Yeah.
there that I think is more of a sales pitch than actual self development or actually
Yeah.
inspiration stuff. You said you're tired of being sold the dream, but what does that actually look like when you're being on the receiving end? Like when you're hearing this like kind of pitch,
See, that
dream
that
pitch?
post that I wrote was a a rant, because I'd just got an email offering me a course, and it was $7,000 for the course. And I was like, if I had $7,000 spare to just throw away on a course, then I wouldn't need your course. And they were saying that they could get you up to the six figures, and they had the testimonials on how, one person started it when they started, they were $500 a month, and then when they were on X amount of dollars a month after the course. I'm like, nobody can guarantee that. You can't guarantee what the readers are going to buy, what they're going to do. Um, if I bought that course and had a bunch of, had a bunch of
That's okay.
terrible books, then I'm not going to make that money no matter how much I spend on a course. And it's those kinds of courses where they are this framing it like this is an investment in yourself and kind of making these kind of promises to you that I got a little bit annoyed and wrote a rant about it. But there are other courses that do teach you specific skills that you need. Like I've recently bought a course on translating my books. That's
Yeah.
still, it's not promising me anything other than I'll learn how to translate my books. So yeah,
How do you
that's what that.
think people get away making these guarantees? Because I see them a lot too.
Yeah, I don't know. It baffles me how well if the endorsements are real, what you're not seeing, whether they're getting a lot of refunds, because obviously there's many things that are smoke and mirrors. They might not even be selling the courses. They just need one person to buy that course off them, and they've made high money. You don't really know what's happening with them.
But there are organizations that have pretty robust student enrollments that make some guarantees that are
Yeah, I think
insane.
also knowing from psychology. I know that people who invest something like that will not admit mostly that it was rubbish because it feels shameful to them.
That's really sad.
And they'll tell them to themselves. It's not even necessarily they'll blame themselves. So if you bought a course for $1,000 on Facebook advertising, and this course was promised you would make your money back in 6 months, and you didn't, most people would not actually question the course. They would question themselves, their books, their products, and it could actually be that the course is not teaching you correctly. But people will um, look to themselves first, and if someone was to ask them about the course, they would then brag about it to other people, just because we don't like to feel like a fool.
That's really interesting psychology because I even saw that kind of recently where people were talking about conferences because I definitely have some concerns about some conferences as well, not conferences as a whole. I think they're great networking opportunities. But, where there's a lot of buzz about a conference, let's just say. I'm not going to name one because this is like classic. Um, there's a lot of buzz about it, a lot of enthusiasm from the conference provider, and people are excited to see their author friends and whatnot. And then you'll hear some other people come along and just be like, yeah, it was great, da, da, da. But the minute like the camera's off or the minute they're not trying to be part of some Facebook conversation, they're actually like, you know what? I don't know if it was really worth my money. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why they're like scared to publicly say it. I don't understand that mentality. It just reminds me of what you're saying, the psychology around whether or not a course was worth it or the guarantee earned out.
Yeah, but we
That's,
like to fit in and belong. I think that's where it comes from.
that
And
makes sense.
yeah, just that's
That
just
makes
our
sense.
nature.
So a lot of authors have courses. I mean, I have a course, you have a course, but there's a pattern where an author's course revenue might outpace their fiction revenue. Why do you think this happens so often? Or is it less
Uh,
often than I think? What do you think?
I think it happens quite often, and I think because cour I'm not sure exact courses are just scalable. You can repeat it over and over again. If it's a specific skill, it's probably not going to go out of fashion. You
Hmm.
know, if it's, for example, like my dictation course, dictation probably isn't going to go out of fashion, so people are going to want to learn it.
Right.
Um, so and I don't know. I think that's probably why they're just easier.
And is there a price point or structure where you think a course crosses from like a reasonable value exchange into selling a dream?
I think But no, I'm not sure actually, because there can be really cheap courses that are not very good, and there can be expensive ones that are amazing. Um, I think when they start going over the $500, then you really need to look at what it's going to be teaching you if you're going to get value out of it with that amount of money,
Right.
kind of thing. I mean, if, 500 is a big amount, it goes obviously people's, again, perception of what's a big amount would vary, but yeah, I don't think the price makes one more valuable, but certainly look at what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
because I had a cheap course. It wasn't that much. It was like $35, about a month ago, and I got it refunded because when I looked at it, somebody had literally it was just, AI scripts, and I was like, "I don't mind you scripting with AI, that's perfectly fine, but at least make it your own so that it's your voice," because I could have just asked ChatGPT to give me the answers.
Bought some content recently. I'm not going to say from who or what exactly it was, but I got some content recently and it was just PDF content. And I needed some of it summarized and I put it into, I forget, did I put it into Claude? I think I put it into Claude or Gemini. And it actually came up with some real red flags about how outdated it all was.
Wow.
And that was kind of crazy. I just said to summarize it. And I think I asked some specific questions of it too. And I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked.
That's crazy.
People can bang out whatever they want to bang out now. I
Yes,
actually
yeah,
just wrote a Substack article about that. That's part of the AI glut. It's not just like books, it's like other stuff that's coming out, whether it's courses or newsletter content or whatever. And
yeah.
there's also with AI, I'm just going to stick with that for a second. It's definitely helping to amplify some voices in the industry that were already getting louder, that maybe weren't necessarily authoritative. They're just really loud and proud.
But yeah.
When you've talked about that before, when you're talking about that, when you're thinking about those louder voices, who are you thinking of? And I don't mean names, but I mean like the pattern.
Um, there's usually like a group, and they usually come from like these big group Facebook groups and stuff, and they are at the conferences and they are all the things, and they're like a clique of people who have just got very loud, and usually they start getting loud by screenshotting their money. That's where it starts.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the pattern I tend to see. And what I've seen over the years is like somebody will start bragging about something they're doing, and then it's making them XXX amount of money, and then one of the bigger people from the conferences, like the runners or speakers, the very popular people, will start um talking to them about it, and it kind of like just snowballs with them. It's very hard not naming people, but I don't want to out
I
anybody.
know, I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, but you see they just become loud, but then when you look at the path they've traveled, it's like what we were saying right at the beginning, it's not something that's repeatable. Usually it's been the right place at the right time doing the right thing, and you can't replicate it, but they become an
Yeah, not
authority.
saying that they're a bad writer, but there were other
No.
variables, yeah,
Yeah.
that helped
Yeah, and it's
lift
not even
them.
just luck,
Sure.
it's just they pulled all the right levers at the right time, and it took off for them, and fantastic. But you can't sell that to somebody else because someone else can't replicate it, but you see them trying.
Yeah. So what do you think actually constitutes authority in the indie space? Results, longevity, transparency, what?
Probably all of that. Your results, some of it, definitely longevity, transparency. I mean, I know a lot of the authors I listen to or speak to or will follow, it's that, but it's also they're relatable and they're very open and with their information, and a lot of them will say, "Just because this is what I'm doing, I can't guarantee it for you, but this is what
Yeah.
I would do." So they're not selling you anything, they're being realistic, and they're like, "This is how I got there, and feel free to try it, but it might not work." Or then they're willing to help and, somebody who's still struggling.
Is there anyone you think who's genuinely worth listening to who doesn't have the platform size to match?
Um, I don't know if there's someone that doesn't have the platform to match. Very I don't know if there's anyone little that I kind of
Maybe not
follow.
little, but maybe even who's just not a loud voice. Like I do feel like there are a bunch of really interesting um, female authors who have really good advice who just aren't always on a megaphone blasting.
Because JT Lawrence, when she started, when I've met her, I didn't know who she was, what she wrote, um, and is making a full-time living out of it. She has her own podcast, and there's a couple of people who are talking at our conference who, when you look at what they're doing, like they don't brag, they just talk at the conferences, and so you don't realize that they actually have done a lot. They've been in this industry for absolutely years. There's a lady called Yvonne who's speaking, and she's speaking on building a following and a fan base. And when you actually look into her, she's done amazing with hers, and she's been doing it for years, but she's not a very loud voice in the industry. In fact, I don't. Until I met her in a conference in a pub, I had no idea who she was.
So I'm going to put something out there that can trigger some people, but do you think there's a gender imbalance with the loud voices?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, it does tend to seem to be more guys than ladies.
There are guys that I follow, but I have to say that I do think there's a gender imbalance and it's really annoying.
Yes, yes, yeah. I
Um,
the ones that dismiss me if I talk about my stuff tends to be guys.
but your
Yeah.
podcast partner, your co-host is a guy.
He is a guy, yeah. He's an okay guy when he's not swearing his head off on the podcast. But he's like the same level. Again, he was someone I met at a conference in a pub. There's a theme. Uh,
Really?
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I do think there definitely is a gender imbalance, and I do think some of those higher level or we see as higher level do kind of have will dismiss the females.
Which is just indicative of the rest of the world, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're in a conference room, the male voices often drown out the female voices. I mean, I remember this at Amazon all the time, and it was absolutely astounding. And they come in with the confidence, and that somehow breeds authority that would not have existed otherwise. I see that a lot. It's a pet peeve of mine for sure. And I really do want to use this podcast to amplify female voices. I don't want it to be a female only podcast. That's not what I'm insinuating at all, but I definitely think that there's a need for that in the indie author community. And it's interesting because I feel like much of the time, and I don't know if this is still the case, but I do feel like that there was a period of time where we talked about like no gatekeepers, and we were trying to do things differently than trad publishing, and even when it came to diversity and inclusion and um things like that. And I feel like a lot of that's fallen by the wayside. It's like where the industry is growing into the same old, just like any other industry. It's kind of disheartening.
Yeah. I do think some of that is just human nature, that we always do it. I was reading a
Sure.
book by sorry, it'll probably be a bit off tangent, but I was reading a book by the singer Corey Taylor. It's called You're Making Me Hate You. And he talks about that if we restarted humanity and put us all in the exact same jumpsuit, that eventually we would start modifying the jumpsuit. People would become leaders. Other people would have more jumpsuits than other people, and it is
It's
just
true.
what we do. So we
Like
can
power
try.
imbalances are human,
Yeah, yeah,
basically.
and it's going to happen all the time, no matter what we
It's
do.
going to happen
Kind of.
all the time, but I think it's really important for people to fight it and to try to keep
Definitely. Yeah.
recalibrating that balance.
Yeah. If you want a really funny story, is my pen name X is kind of a gender neutral pen name,
Uh-huh.
and there is a big indie author who will talk to my pen name on Messenger and stuff and ask advice for things because I've chatted about things I've done on there and things I've achieved, and so he's messaged me, and same person will not speak to me. And I'm like, "It's very funny." Yeah, he dismisses me, yeah, and I'm like, "That is hilarious."
My God, boy, do I wish you'd name names on that one, but I totally understand. I totally understand.
Yeah, but I think because the other one is kinda like nobody really knows, it was just very funny. Yeah.
I mean, you never know with pen names.
No,
That's what's so interesting. You just never
but
know.
the information that I know is exactly the same, but if he hears it out of my voice at a conference when we're talking, totally blanked. I'm like, "It's very funny."
Wow. So if a newer indie author could ignore one conventional piece of wisdom floating around the space right now, what should it be?
Um, gosh, there's so many to ignore.
You can name
Um,
more than one.
yeah,
We
I
have
mean,
a
there's
little
lots
bit of time.
yeah, there's lots of things like rapid release and,
Hmm.
um, write every day and all those kind of things. I would just say ignore all those things. Ignore anything that says you have to do this. You have to write every day, you have to rapid release, you have to write quickly, you have to write this genre. Yeah.
I
That
like
that's
that.
yeah. If
You
it if
do
it's
have
have
to,
if it comes with a
sorry.
have to, then question it.
I think there's one thing that you have to do.
Write the book.
You write the book, and also you have to ask yourself why you're doing it,
Yeah.
because that can inform, like, if you want to make money off it, you have to build a platform.
Yes. Yeah.
You can't just throw it up there. That's what I see a lot of people come to me for, and they're just like, wait, I wrote this book and nothing's happening. It's like, yeah, because you're not doing anything with it. They think it's like 2012, like when you started, when you're
Yeah.
just putting something up and you're letting it go.
You can just make money, yeah, with them, yeah.
Hmm.
Mostly it would be the other way if someone asked me what they need to do. It's first decide what you want, and then you can kind of
Yeah,
backwards engineer what do you want. Are you wanting to just publish a book and it's done? Or are you wanting to start making money? Well, that's when you start looking at mailing lists and all the other things.
right. So, with all the projects that you have your hands on, books and non-books, what are you most excited about in the coming year?
I'm excited for my conference. Um,
Tell us a little bit about that and why you started
yes,
it, all that good stuff.
we started it was kinda like a little bit rebellious. Most conferences in the UK are in London, and we want something in the north. So it was, let's have it in the north. We also want to um not have it so aspirational. One of the things we've said one of the things we said to our speakers is they need to be able to give the people at the conference something they can action the next day, so they can go home and take immediate action. Um,
That's great.
yeah, because we want it to actually be teaching someone something.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is the first year you're doing the
It's
conference.
the first year, yeah, it's a full day, on the 21st of November, and then there is a Christmas party in the evening afterwards. It all started because I decided that if you've ever worked in office jobs, you have Christmas parties.
Yeah.
Uh, I was like, when we're authors, we're home alone, so you have a Christmas party of one. So I'm like, let's get all our colleagues together and have a Christmas party. So that's actually where it grew from, which was last year. So yeah, there's a Christmas party this year.
And where in the north of England is it?
It's in Manchester. It's at the Manchester Art Gallery, which is actually now round the corner from Number 10 North. Because not to talk politics, but the Prime Minister's just
Cool.
his North
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. And the Christmas markets should be on as well. So yeah, be Christmas themed, much to my co-host displeasure.
So where can people find you and follow what you're building?
I've got loads of things. There's me on Facebook, just as Rachel Morton. I've got my YouTube channel, Rachel Morton. I do have a little school group that is completely free to be part of. It is just a community to try and get everyone writing and productive. That's on school, and it's the indie author base. And then if you're interested in the conference, it's iamanchester.com.
Cool. We'll include all of this in the show notes. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's our show. Find resources and more at zenandtheartofselfpublishing.com. I'm Janet, and I'll see you next time. Until then, take a deep breath, trust your work, and keep writing.